Okay, so today we're diving into mental health tech, specifically a research project happening over in Sheffield. And it's really interesting because they're looking at how podcasts and games and even real-world community spaces can all be used together to support mental health.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's kind of a holistic approach. They're not just focusing on one type of technology,
Mhm.
but building this entire ecosystem designed to support well-being
Yeah.
from multiple angles.
Exactly. And we're going to be looking at the launch script for a podcast called Mind Matters, which is a key part of this project. But they're also developing a gamified platform called B-Spatial. And they've even set up a physical research hub
Yeah,
right in the city center.
yeah, having that real-world component, I think it allows them to gather some really rich data
Mm.
on how people engage with mental health support. They're looking at everything from user experience on the platform to how the physical environment actually impacts people's willingness
Mhm.
to engage in these activities.
So it's not just about building technology. It's about understanding the human element, too.
Exactly. And they're doing that through four main areas of research: user experience, human-computer interaction, safety and security,
Hmm.
and engagement.
Okay, those sound like some pretty technical areas.
They are, but they're also really important for understanding how effective mental health tools can be.
Can you give us a quick breakdown of what those terms mean and how they apply to this project?
Sure. So UX focuses on how easy and enjoyable a product is to use. But, think about like a clunky app or a website that is just frustrating to use. That's bad UX.
Yeah.
And so in this project, they're using things like usability testing, where they observe people actually interacting with the B-Spatial platform to make sure that it's intuitive and fun to use. Then you have HCI, human-computer interaction, which looks at the relationship between humans and computers. So how people interact with the technology on a cognitive and emotional level.
So it's about understanding how the technology makes people feel.
Yes, exactly. And all that feeds into whether people actually engage with the platform and stick with it long term.
Okay, so let's talk about the podcast itself. Mind Matters. How does that fit into this whole ecosystem?
Right, so it's designed to be more than just a way to give out information. They're exploring a wide range of mental health topics, and they're tailoring content for different age groups. But the really cool part is the podcast is integrated with the B-Spatial platform. So imagine you're listening to an episode on stress management, and then you can go onto the platform and complete a related challenge, like maybe logging your mood or practicing a mindfulness technique. They're looking at whether this type of active engagement actually enhances the learning experience.
I love that. I'm a big believer in taking action on what you learn.
Yeah, me too. And from a research perspective, it gives them some incredible insight into what motivates people to engage with mental health tools. Is it the reward system, the sense of accomplishment, social connection? These are all questions they're hoping to answer.
It's like they're gamifying the entire learning process. Which brings us to B-Spatial. Can you tell me a little bit more about this platform and how it works?
Sure. So imagine a platform where you can track your mental well-being, learn coping skills,
Yes.
connect with others, and all within a fun, engaging, game-like environment. So that's what B-Spatial is. You earn points, you can unlock rewards, level up as you progress. So it makes it feel less like work and more like play.
I can definitely see how that would be appealing, especially for younger people
Yeah.
who are so used to those gamified experiences.
Right, but they're also being mindful of making it accessible to everyone, regardless of their age or how tech-savvy they are. So one of the things they're studying is how people with diverse needs and abilities interact with the platform.
That's so important. We need to make sure these tools are inclusive.
Absolutely. And then to understand how B-Spatial works in a real-world setting, they've created this research hub.
Okay, the research hub.
Yeah.
I'm picturing like a high-tech lab with people hooked up to monitors, but I have a feeling it's much more than that.
Yeah, it's not a sterile lab environment at all. It's a welcoming space in the city center where people can try out the platform, attend workshops, and even chat with the researchers.
So it's a place where people can feel comfortable and supported.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating is they're also studying how the environment itself impacts people's interactions with the technology.
Wait, so they're looking at how the physical space affects people's mental state while they're using the platform.
Yeah, things like lighting, noise levels, even the furniture can all influence user experience.
I'm really curious to see what they find.
Me too. It really highlights how holistic this research is.
Okay, so we've got this amazing project with the podcast, the platform, the real-world hub. How are they going to gather all of the data to make sense of this?
It is complex. which is why they're using a mixed methods approach. So they're combining lots of different types of data. They'll be using surveys to gather information, like basic demographics and opinions, usability testing, so they can observe people interacting with the platform, focus groups to get feedback from different groups, and then in-depth interviews to really explore individual experiences.
Wow, they're really covering all the bases.
And they're also tracking data from the B-Spatial platform itself. Things like how often people log in, what features they're using, and how they're progressing through those challenges.
And all of that data is anonymized, right?
Of course,
Yeah.
to protect people's privacy. But it will provide valuable insight into what's working, what's not, and how they can improve the platform.
I am blown away by the level of thought and care that's gone into this project.
Me too. And it's all designed to be very participatory.
Right, you mentioned that earlier. They're really encouraging people to get involved.
Yeah, you can use the platform yourself, visit the hub, provide feedback,
Yep.
or even partner with the project if you're part of a local organization.
I love that. So while all this is happening in Sheffield, the implications of this research could be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. If this project is successful, it has the potential to create a blueprint for effective and inclusive mental health technology that could be used all over the world.
So it's about more than just creating cool tech. It's about using technology to create positive change.
Exactly. And that's something we'll explore further when we delve deeper into this project after a short break. But before we do, I have a question for you.
Oh, I love a good cliffhanger. What's on your mind?
Of everything we've discussed so far, what stands out to you as being particularly innovative or impactful? What has piqued your interest the most? We'll be back in a moment to share our thoughts and continue our deep dive.
Yeah, the research hub is really fascinating to me.
I agree. It's a really unique approach. It's not just about gathering data. It's also about building those relationships.
Yeah.
Having that physical space really lets researchers connect with people on a more personal level.
Yeah, it definitely makes it feel like a collaborative effort, like the community's involved in shaping the future of mental health support.
Right. That sense of ownership is so important. When people feel like they're a part of something, they're more likely to stick with it, provide feedback, advocate for its success.
You know, we talked about Sheffield being a diverse city. How are the researchers making sure that this platform is accessible to everyone?
Well, they're doing user testing with a wide range of people to identify any barriers. For example, they're working with people with neurodivergent conditions and those who maybe aren't as comfortable with technology to make sure the platform is user-friendly.
It's so important to think about those things.
Definitely. When it comes to mental health, one size fits all rarely works.
So beyond just the platform itself, are they doing anything to make sure the content resonates with different communities?
Yeah, for sure. They're thinking about things like cultural relevance and linguistic diversity. So that can mean offering content in multiple languages or using different storytelling approaches that resonate with specific cultural backgrounds.
So it's about more than just translating the words.
Right. It's about understanding the nuances.
And they're thinking about how to make the research hub inclusive too.
Yes. Things like quiet spaces for people sensitive to noise and making sure the layout is accessible for people with mobility issues.
I think all of this really shows how important it is to have that holistic view of mental health support.
Absolutely. And, thinking about our listeners' interest in technology, I think it's worth diving a little deeper into how it's being used here.
Yeah, definitely. We've talked about gamification and the platform, but there's also the podcast Mind Matters. What are they doing on the tech side with that?
Well, they're looking at different podcast formats and how those affect engagement, for example. Are shorter episodes more effective? Or do people learn better from longer stories? They're also trying out interactive elements like polls or quizzes that people can participate in right from the podcast app.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And then there's the data tracking side of things. So they can see how often people listen to the podcast if they do the challenges, and even how their mood changes over time.
It sounds like they're using technology in some really innovative ways.
They are, but it's important to remember that technology isn't perfect.
Right. Are there any downsides they're looking at?
Well, there's always the risk of a digital divide, where people who don't have access or aren't comfortable with technology get left behind. And then there are the privacy and security concerns, especially when you're dealing with sensitive information.
It sounds like the researchers are aware of those challenges, though.
Yeah, they're very focused on the ethics. They talk a lot about user consent, data security, making sure everyone can access the technology.
That's good to hear. Technology should be used to help people, not create more problems.
I agree. And this project seems to be a good example of that.
It's definitely inspiring. But, we've talked about all the great things they're doing. What does this mean for the rest of the world? How can this research actually make a difference beyond Sheffield?
That's a great question. And it's something we'll explore in our final segment.
Okay, so we're back, ready to uncover that final piece of the puzzle.
This project in Sheffield, it's not just about the research itself. They want to use what they learn to actually create change.
Yeah, they're not just looking for interesting data. They want to improve people's lives.
Exactly. And their goal is to create a blueprint for others to follow. So other regions, other countries can create similar programs.
So Sheffield is like a testing ground.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
They plan to share everything they learn with policymakers, healthcare providers, anyone working in mental health.
It's amazing that they're so focused on sharing.
Yeah, it's not about keeping secrets, it's about spreading the knowledge.
So imagine if this works. Imagine every community having access to these kinds of resources.
It could really change things. We could see schools using platforms like B-Spatial. Healthcare providers could use the data to really personalize care.
That's the dream, mental health support that's proactive.
Exactly. And I think what's really important here is that technology isn't replacing human connection. It's enhancing it.
Right, like the research hub.
Yeah, it's a place where technology and community come together.
I have to say, learning about this project has made me really hopeful about the future of mental health care.
Me too. It's inspiring to see what can happen when people work together.
We've talked a lot about the project itself, but I want to end by talking about us, about what we can do as individuals.
That's a really important point. We all have a role to play.
So what can we do?
Well, it can be simple things. Checking in on your friends, practicing self-care, talking about mental health. Those things can make a difference.
It's about breaking down stigma.
Exactly.
And you don't have to be an expert to make a difference.
Everyone can contribute.
So that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
We hope you found it insightful.
We encourage you to keep learning, keep exploring, and most importantly, take care of yourselves and each other.